Getting ready to cut out sides. Exciting days we live in. Right, we've got some very roughly cut out sides. Now I can start to consider control and then how I want to do the cavity. So I'm going to be using some MDF that I've got over here. I've got a pickup cavity cover that I've used on a lot of different guitars. It's a huge cover though. I mean, it would take up that entire side. But I should be able to build the cover out of some of these offcuts. And so I'm going to save these over here. I might have a piece too left over. I don't know. But I don't think I'm going to use this one. I think I'm going to start something brand new. It'll be something like this, just more tailored to this guitar. These pens work really well. I'm very happy with how everything just lines up real easily. There we go, starting to look like a bass. So after mulling over it for a little while, I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and use my existing template. It really suits everything that I need out of it, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So, we'll go through the process of how I route out a chamber in the back for all of your electronics, and how you make a cover for that chamber, and how you can really design your own, and it's not that difficult, especially if you know how to use a router just a little bit. So we'll go through that right now. So let's just assume that this is the design that I came up with. So essentially this is going to end up being the cover. That's really the only purpose this serves, is the cover, and this allows you to create a cover and to recess so that the cover sits in the guitar. Everything else, you really need another template. I don't use a second template. I don't think it's necessary, and I'll show you why. So here is, I've roughly drawn out concept I'm going for. And so, as you can see, this is where the back's going to sit. So it'll be like that. So all I did was trace it out. Now what I'm going to do is think about, where is everything going to come into this? So there's a neck pickup that's going to come in about right here, and so I'm going to need access for that. And I'm probably going to be able to get away with drilling a hole right here and a hole right here, and having access built before I even glue this thing together, which is, I've never built a neck through guitar. It is completely different from building a tenon body neck, and I'm really starting to enjoy the little intricacies that the access points, and if you build this thing, according to a certain process, you can really get away with all sorts of neat stuff. So I've got an access for my neck pickup. Bridge pickup is going to come in about right there. I'm also going to have the bridge itself, which, remember, I've got to run a line from. And so that's going to come in about right here. And so now I've got all of my access from the neck for everything that I need. I'm also going to have an output jack, which will probably be about right here. And so that gives me an idea of where everything's going to be coming into this. So assuming this is the cover, what I need to do now is draw out the actual cavity. And the first thing I do is I put a couple of spots like this so that it has some stability. Last thing you want is for the thing to rattle around. And so these are areas that I am not going to route out. So this is all going to stay there. Now, when we cut out the top, it's going to sit on top of here, and these are where all my screws are going to go. And so we'll have 3 screws holding it down. So we'll end up recessing this entire shape about that much, you know, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, however thick the cap, the top is going to be, the cover is going to be. We'll recess about that much. And then we're going to recess the rest of this considerably more, probably down to about there in some spots for the potentiometers and stuff. And so what I'll do is come in with the drill press and hog out all of everything within these squiggles. So now this is all fair game to get rid of. Like, I can get rid of all of this stuff. Once that's hogged out to a certain depth, again, like I'm thinking about doing a preamp so it'll be active and passive. And I've got some, you know, double pull, double throw switches, but the head on them is so small, the threading, that I don't know if I'm comfortable using them in a top that doesn't have a pick guard. See, that's really small. And so it would have to be a minimum thickness of, let's see, 1/4 inch, maybe a little less than a 1/4 inch. It's hard to see. So I have to have room for the nut and the washer. So I don't know. That might be. So what we're talking about doing is having a switch, and then there's going to be a preamp, which has a volume, low, mid, high, and a fader, like a blend pot. And then I'll have 2 pots for if it's passive. So I'll have a double throw, double pull switch. So if you're going this way, let's see. Let's do it like this. So I haven't really had a chance to write this out either. So I'll end up having the double pull switch right here, which will go active or passive. That'll go about here. There's my switch. Then I'm thinking about doing the blender pot for the 2 pickups above that. And so if you turn this, you turn on each one of these. Then on this side, I'm going to do volume, low, mid, high. And then if you're in passive, you'll have a volume and a tone, just like a regular Fender bass. So you'll have switch between active and passive, pickups, blending pot, volume tone for passive, and then a volume low, mid, and high for active. And I should be able to fit all of that inside of a cavity that big, you know, minus those little things. I ordered the pickups and the preamp, and so I'm going to wait to get that in the mail before I start cutting anything out, because the preamp could be a lot smaller than I expect. It could be a lot bigger than I expect. I don't know. And I mean, just these 2 pots alone take up pretty good space. We're talking about having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more and a switch. So I need to see how big the pots are on that. I've also decided that I'm going to recess this. I'm going to try to follow this line as much as I can, but this will recess down a little bit just to give it some, you know, classiness. It's going to be classy. But once you get your concept and you've decided where you're not going to cut, what I do at this point is drill press, cut this down as close as I can to the thickness that I want for the top to be. So you want the top to be about 1/4 inch at least, so that the butt of this just barely comes out. And then you can start to design where you want things to go. So we know where there's a bridge wire is going to come in here, pickups are going to come in here, output's going to be here. What I'll probably do is sink a screw with a plate on it to be my ground. And so I'll have grounds come in off the pickups, I'll have a ground come in from there, and I'll have a ground going to my out. I'm also going to have a ground, well, that'll be there. That means the switch will be here. That means a fader will be here. The pickup hot is going to come in there. And then from here, it's going to go to the switch. And then the switch will have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2. It'll have this line and that line. It's going to be a mess in here. There's going to be a 9-volt battery. But I think I'm going to be able to get away with using some of these scraps to make the cavity cover. I'm going to make sure that I keep like this piece so that when I clamp this thing up, I have something to clamp it against. But that right there is thick enough. I should be able to get one glue surface and get a full cover so that it's very pretty. So there we go. So I've cut out, I found 2 pieces that would work, that were the right, thickness or whatever, and I made sure to get the top. And then that's how they're going to glue together. I don't know, why does that look like it's good? Because it is. It's a good seam. So I'll try to match this quilting as good as I can. It's pretty close actually. And then cut out my shape and then run this thing through my thickness planer until I get it to the right thickness that I want. And then for the cap, you have to sand it exactly to that pencil line. And don't go any farther than that. And then you have to form fit it. And so anywhere that you start to get resistance, you put a little mark and sand it just a little bit. I'll get to that in a second. But right now I need to glue this guy up so we can have a cover. So I've got my top cut out, or the cap to the control. And this is my template. It's very snug. It's a little too snug, and so what I'm doing is just going around the spots that I don't see any light. Let me show you. Once it starts to fit, it's harder to get it to fit in there. And come around and look, see wherever, there's no gaps. So this side is thick. Let's see. See, there's a gap right here. That's hard to see. See, it's barely little gaps. I don't want to sand there. But everywhere that there, see, like right here. So what I'll do is I'll go around with a pencil and I'll say, there's a spot I need to sand. There's this whole side right here I need to sand. This whole side I need to sand. Right here I need to sand. Right here I need to sand. And right here I need to sand. So I'll pull this guy out and just use a flat block and sand these spots until it fits real comfortable. Then when I route, the cavity, it'll fit. Voila. I've also got my idea for my cavity laid out. And so I'll have a switch that goes between active and passive. This will be my active side, this will be my passive side. Blender for the pickups, so you go through your neck and bridge pickup. This is a passive volume, passive tone. If I switch over to this side, I've got an active volume and then low, mid, high. Bass, mid, high. So I should be able to wire this pretty easy, and it should fit inside of this cavity. It's a pretty big cavity. But I'm having a 9-volt and then the active electronics up here. Pretty cool. So I've got my layout. I've triple checked all of my distances and stuff like that. So what we got is, I actually threw this thing down on my lap a few times to make sure that I plan on getting some small knobs. The pots fit. There's plenty of space, even though it doesn't look like there should be. There is plenty of space. They're far enough away from the pickups to where, when I play the bass, I actually will anchor my hand with my fingers sometimes if I play with my thumb. And so the knobs will be out of the way. Just naturally, when this sits in my lap, my fingers want to go right here by these top two pickups. So what I'm going to do now is take my router template that I made with the cap. So I've got my template. I'm going to double stick tape this to the body and then route out less than that deep. Probably most about that thickness. Let's see. I'll probably leave, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, maybe 2/8 of an inch. But I'll route down the difference so that this cap will sit flush in there. Once I've got the cap fit, I can use my drill press and start to hog out this stuff to a thickness, to about that close to the bottom, to the top. And then I'll come back I'll clean this up with a chisel. I'll clean up the top of this inside cavity with a chisel so that it's smooth, and then that will be my new router edge, and I'll get a bearing bit, drop it in there, and make this all flush. This knob, this switch right here, the neck on the threading is a little shorter than all of these other ones, and so I might just kick this one down on its own a little bit, and just, again, I'll get my drill press with a fat bit and just drop down a little circle right there so that it's closer. So that's what I gotta do right now. So I've been looking online for knobs and what I'm gonna do, and I hate to put just a generic black knob on this, and I need a lot of knobs, and so it's gonna, if I find something that I like that's expensive, I gotta buy like a pack of 10. And I just really don't like the idea of commercial knobs on this. So I played around with making one out of black walnut with a Purple Heart cap. And so I used, a whole saw bit or whatever this is called. And I drilled out with a Forstner bit the inside, and I just used a 1/2 inch just because I had a 1/2 inch dowel that I could use to put it back on my drill press and spin it like a lathe. Then I glued a piece of Purple Heart on top, so now it's got the hole. And what I'll probably do is fill this with epoxy, and once the epoxy is getting ready to set, I'll push one of the tops to these so that rifling, whatever that's called, will get set into the epoxy inside of this. But I mean, that's 80 grit. I haven't really sanded it or done anything. It's pretty fun. Put it on a peg, chuck it up into my press. And so I think I'm going to make a set of these and then use, you know, like a fret dot and put a fret dot in there. And round over these corners a little better. Make them a little thinner. That's too thick. I mean, it's still okay, but it's too thick. Maybe make it a little shorter, but I think that's what I'm going to do. Just use the wood that I've already got for the body. Let me see if I can. Let's see, what does that look like? So, I mean, that's pretty neat. I like the look of it. So I'm going to make, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these. For that one, I used this board and of black walnut, and then there's a piece of Purple Heart there at the end of my bench. So let's make some knobs. So I'm getting ready to route this out. I'm using double stick tape to just go around the perimeter of this thing. Tape it on the back, and then run over to the side of the house with a, you know, bearing flush trim bit router, and we will take off not quite that much. So I've got my template and I've cut out, see this right here, it's just a little bit thinner than my the cap for my control cavity. So what I'm going to do now is we'll take off our little template. Let me pause. So we've got our cap, we've got our cavity. Now we can draw out where we want the ledges for the cap to go. So I'll probably have a ledge that's going to go around this whole perimeter, and then the cap will fit nice in there just like that. And now all we have to do is come back with a sander once we do final sanding, and we'll take off that little bit right there. I should still have plenty of room right here to do a carve on the back side. I'm not going to carve anywhere near. Once I start to get close to here, that's when the carve is sort of going to go away, because I don't want to carve into the cavity at all. But cap works. That's how I fit a cap for a homemade design control cavity. I figure I'll have a bridge, right, like a ledge right here. I'll have one across this whole end. I'll have one here, and then I'll have a thin ledge, probably like that. That still leaves me plenty of room for these pots. These pots are really small. And since the switch is going to be right here, the preamp and the output will probably go like this, and then I'll have the battery. I'll put a battery clip for a 9-volt. So the battery will sit there, preamp housing will sit here, and I'll have a pot there, wires between them, and a cap, and then I'll have a pot. These will all be going to this thing. This will be a switch. This will be a pot, and the output. This switch is going to have that, and these. Well, it'll have this one. It'll have that one, and it'll have one to here, and then it'll have one to there. That works. Cool. And then that means we'll have, you know, like a screw here and a screw here, and I'll probably see if I can't put a screw like right here and maybe draw out, make a note to myself to draw out a bigger ledge right there so we can have a screw. It's pretty easy. Just design your shape, cut it out. The way I cut it out is drill a hole in it, and then I'll use a jigsaw, and once I get close, I'll throw it on either a sander inside of a drill press, like one of these guys, or if you have a spindle sander, throw it inside of one of those, clean up the edges real good. You can also just use a file, but it's hard to get a 90-degree angle with a file. Then I fit my top, my cap, my lid to the template, and then I use my template to cut out the top for the cap. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to use my drill press with some Forstner bits and bring all that I want down to about here, so a little over 1/4 inch. And then if there's a spot, like for instance this switch, I know is going to need to be a little bit thinner, the cap is, the front of the guitar. And so what I'll do is I'll get a Forstner bit that's bigger than the size of that switch, and it's really small. And so there'll just be a bigger circle right here that's a little bit lower than the final bottom. You can also do something like that and build in a like a battery housing, but I've got a little clip that holds 9 volts. That means I'll put a ground about right there. Okay, so that was easy.